By now, everybody who's wanted them has a copy of or available to them, a copy of our line item budget, which lines out all the expenditures and revenues the city expects in fiscal year 2017, which begins October 1st of 2016, extending through September 30th of 2017. And perhaps more informative for the public is our budget summary, which talks about budget messages, talks about the aggregates of the budget and the trends that we've gone through for at least the past several years, and sometimes dating back as much as 20 years. So with that, I'll begin the process. The council knows that on July 11th, 2016, we had our annual budget workshop. It was originally scheduled for 2 days, the 11th and 12th of July. We only needed 1 day, the 11th, to get through it. And we will start going through some of those pieces of the budget. And I'll be a little bit abbreviated on those issues that have been discussed before. First thing that we wanted to talk about is the budget is built on several different factors. One of the big ones is collaboration and partnership between the city, the university, Moscow School District, the Chamber of Commerce, City of Pullman, Pullman-Moscow Airport Board, so on and so forth. The graphic you see up there is just one of the activities that the City of Moscow will be invested in with the University of Idaho. We also engaged this year in a strategic planning process. Actually, it was approved by the City Council last year. It was about 14 months in the making, and in actuality probably stretched over the better part of a dozen years as we began and continued and completed comprehensive planning for a lot of the city's functions. Out of those efforts came a strategic plan that was built on major challenge areas, as you'll see down here at the bottom. Major challenge areas were determined by the City Council. What were the things that were very important to the city? And what were some challenges that needed to be overcome in order for the city to achieve its mission, which you see on the wall and has been there since 2002. The MCA that's called out in this slide is declining enrollment at the University of Idaho negatively impacts Moscow. We've all been reading about the enrollment issues at the University of Idaho and the efforts made by University of Idaho President Chuck Staben and his staff to try and reverse that trend, and they're beginning to see some positive results of those efforts. And the city has helped in a bunch of different ways to assist in that. Okay, strategic planning again. We began it in October of 2014 in earnest. These are the sorts of things that the council considered as they looked through the major challenge areas. The impacts, the magnitudes, pervasiveness, threat levels, frequencies, short versus long-term issues, whether they're controllable or not controllable, timing for implementation, and long-term community vision. And again, this is also focusing on one MCA, insufficient use of strategic planning to inform management and budgeting. One of the things that staff and the council has focused on in the past is without a strategic plan guiding us, we tend to budget in a 1 to 2 year period rather than the 5, 10, and 20-year time horizons that strategic planning helps. Then the council identified some different issues, MCAs, that they felt were of immediate and long-term concerns to the citizens. Deteriorating pavement conditions, again, declining enrollments, inadequate law enforcement infrastructure, to name a few. And then we had internal issues as well, law enforcement staffing reviews, a police department building that has been substandard for years, inadequate fleet facility, and inadequate shop workspace were just a few of the top issues. Excuse me, I have a frog in my throat. Again, this is just another way to look at the ratings that the council, when they rated those different MCAs, Tier 1 being of the highest importance for external, and Tier 1 highest importance of internal. Okay, so those major challenge areas, we started off the budget process, and as I indicated before, we used to do budgeting through a goal-setting process, which proved at different times to be ineffective to effective, depending on the number of challenges and issues we were trying to deal with in a certain year. Again, looking at the longer-term horizon, having the council prioritize those long-range and short-term issues assisted the staff in identifying ways to deal with these issues. The first one is pavement management program. You'll see in the budget this year, when in the past we have had as much as $400,000 in our pavement management program. That was usually achieved by carrying over previous budgets to achieve that $400,000. Police department facility. We'll talk a little bit today about the council's direction in exploring a potential general obligation bond issue and addressing the police department, which has been an issue for years. Fleet facility shop workspace has to do with our city shop, and which also houses our fleet facility, equipment owned by the water and sewer departments, as well as parks shop as well, and street department. Park development. As the council knows, that there are master plans for virtually, I think we have 4 completed master plans and 5 additional parks that either do not have public access or their boundaries aren't completed yet, that funding is extremely hard to come by. Fire trucks. There was a bond issue that was put to the voters in 2001 to purchase fire trucks, 3 pupper trucks. I'm sure our fire chief will say I'm not using the right term, but these are the snub-nosed trucks that we have around town. And then you have a truck that's a ladder truck, which was the last one we purchased. That was done through a bond issue, and then the University of Idaho paid for half of the ladder truck to assist in our volunteer fire department maintaining a Class 3 fire rating, which assists our community in a couple of ways. One is it takes away about a $3 to $3.5 million current operations budget and capital budget that we would have to include in our already tight city budget, as well as lowering the insurance rates, fire insurance rates for our community. So that's an issue. Downtown improvements, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Downtown is the heart of the community, and its infrastructure is aging. That was another MCA that the council identified. Our recycling center, yard waste drop-off relocation. This is an area where our current recycling center is now. Council approved a single-stream recycling program, making a lot of what is done at that facility a bailing operation, whether or not it's appropriate in that spot. Obviously, the drop-off and the yard waste facility needs to be maintained, and currently our sanitation department is looking into that. Okay, these are a couple of the things addressing those MCAs with perhaps a general obligation bond or loan. We have limited revenue to address government facilities, infrastructure, and parks. We have a property tax cap imposed by the Idaho legislature of a limitation of 3% over the previous year's levy, which amounts to an annual increase, if the council took it every year, of $157,000. That number fluctuates based on some adjustments within our levy, including annexations and new construction, but for this year, or FY2017, the maximum the council could take would be a $157,000 tax increase. We do not have the ability in Idaho for a local option sales tax. The state controls that, and our city and our citizens are not able to vote a tax increase to take advantage of the transient population, folks who come through for games and all that sort of thing. So there are some things that we've looked at. General obligation bond or loan would be structured. It must be approved by the voters with 66 2/3%, and it addresses these issues: only public facilities, equipment, and infrastructure. As proposed, as directed by the City Council, the funds would not be used in any way for operations, but for those sorts of things that we find an awfully hard time accumulating funding for to address those public infrastructure issues. So going back, reviewing the capital needs, the inadequate police facility MCA, funds are available in capital projects to retain a consultant, and we have done so pursuant to council direction. We assume the cost, or we expect the cost based on square footage estimations, will be in the range of $5 million. Fire truck replacement, as I indicated, it was done back in 1991. The proposal is to go out again. We have preliminarily estimated and are speccing those trucks. We anticipate that the cost will be around $2 million, with the University of Idaho adding to that an additional $500,000 or $600,000 for an expected $1.2 million for a ladder truck, a very expensive piece of equipment. Deteriorating pavement conditions, I've already reported on the $700,000 proposed in FY16 or 17. We are proposing that approximately $1 million of a GO bond issue be dedicated for street maintenance as well. Parks development, Dwight Curtis, our Parks and Rec Director, over the last several months has brought master plans for 4 different parks. Those parks range in cost from about $750,000 to about $1.8 million, depending on amenities. These are costs that are very difficult to raise, this sort of funding. So we have a proposal that, in conjunction with some additional funding for playgrounds, $1 million could go toward minimal development of these parks. That is, to install a playground, provide pathways and accessibility for our young people, so some of these unserved areas of the city could have parks for their children to play on, and we could do that with the general obligation bond funding. Inadequate shop workspace is something that we're also considering as well. The 3 enterprise funds, water, sewer, and sanitation, have some amount of facility out there, mostly the water and sewer fund, and we will be able to help fund that with utility revenues. However, the parks shop and the street fund, which are both special revenue funds, which essentially are subsidized by the general fund, and the internal service fund of the fleet fund. So those funds will come out of the general fund as well. So again, accumulating the type of funding necessary is very difficult. So that's under consideration. And aging downtown improvements. As you know, the council in 1980, there was a downtown LID that essentially redid downtown, created Friendship Square, shut down sections of 4th Street, created the city park that is now Friendship Square in conjunction with the North-South Couplet project. That's been a long time, over 35 years ago. Friendship Square has been redone back in 2006, but the aggregate intersections and ADA access is inadequate and needs to be replaced. Those are not cheap replacements. If we can get those intersections replaced, then we can build the rest of the street over time to meet those sections. So we're hoping to get authorization for that as well. But that's a direct benefit to downtown. It benefits our 26-week annual festival of the farmers market, so on and so forth, and all the other activities that occur in downtown. Moscow has a downtown that's truly the heart of the community and is the envy of most cities in the state of Idaho. This is generally what that general obligation bond would look like. And again, I say bond or loan because there are differences. It is essentially the city's ability to incur debt that lasts longer than one budget year. It's important to note that any bond or loan proposal would be approved by City Council. This is a city and mayor and council initiative. Staff is working on it to try and develop issues for you to take a look at, and we will bring that back to you. We've set up technical advisory committees that will flesh out each of these issues and bring those back to you. It's important to remember that it will take 66 2/3 of the citizens of Moscow voting for this for it to happen. So it's something that the citizens will have to believe is something that is a good thing for the city. We're proposing a $10 million principal estimated at this time. Again, we're just starting the process, so we anticipate it'll be somewhere around that amount, and that is the amount that we have included in the FY 2017 budget.